everybody? I'm here with Jojo, and I'm bringing you guys this full story or one shot, if you want to call it. What if I was the Darkest Knight? If you don't know who the Darkest Knight is, then maybe you should search through the DC comics or even search it up Google. You'll get videos and images of this. So yeah, if wondering, I'm gonna explain to you guys who the Dark Knight is. He's an alternative dark version of the original Batman. Before he was called the Darkest Knight, as he called himself that, he was known as the Batman who laughs. He was from dark universes, which Batman killed Joker after he killed multiple families in front of him. Eventually, after Batman snapped the Joker's neck, he released a poisonous gas, the Joker toxin, which go into his side, bruise his body. Eventually, leading him to go maniac and eventually go into crazy levels of Joker insanity. Eventually, leading him to become the Batman who laughs. Eventually, defeating all the Justice League and killing them all. Eventually, becoming the old ruler of his universe. Eventually, he was recruited from from two gods, but eventually he was able to betray both of them, eventually becoming a god himself, destroying Perpetua, the mother of the multiverse, able to kill her without any issue. He became so powerful that he was able to even intervene his own death by the most powerful Superman, Superboy Prime, and he was stated to be the strongest out of all Supermans. Yet, Darkest Knight survived all his power. But yet, a piece of him then, after the universe will start to get reset, the Batman who has decided that if he can't have this power, then maybe he should find a successor for it. So the Darkest Knight decided to create a clones of every each dark Batman that he was able to recruit into his team, and then making them into a soldier loyal to the next Darkest Knight. Eventually, that energy was going to the multiverse Due to the energy being so potent, it would destroy the universe as easy as it should. Eventually leading to my planet Earth. Eventually, when I was born, the Darkest Night energy will go inside my body. It will make me much more healthier than any baby, but yet I'll feel a incredible strange power. Of course, I'll grow up like any normal child, but eventually I'll see the images and even the Darkest Night's deeds. Eventually terrifying me and even going to therapy with me explaining everything about it and how it happened. Eventually I was able to get through it, but eventually after reaching my 18 years, I was able to fully grasp on the Darkest Knight's power. If only I know that this is actually a fan fiction because in my world, DC is actually a fan fiction. While I actually possess these type of powers, I would be extremely terrified just by me thinking that I had these powers. I wondered if I have his mentality, but I would soon realize if I did have it, then I would have killed my parents the moment I was born. When I, of course, I would start thinking a lot deeply about it, and eventually use the Darkest Knight's powers. I was able to actually realize that this Dark Knight decided to get rid of his powers so he can give it to a successor who maybe was able to conquer the entire multiverse if he couldn't. Of course, I was able to conquer it, but in a different way, to protect it, and maybe even build an entire team of protecting the entire multiverse, calling ourselves the multiverse of guardians. I was deciding to brought 10 variations of myself, being incredibly strong, but first I need to grasp all my powers. Eventually, after I will tell to my parents that I will be gone for at least a year, they'll tell me to come back as soon as I can, with me of course nodding. Eventually, I'll go into a dark abyss void, which I'll be able to create after using my powers for the first time. If only just me grasping the powers, this Darkest Night, I was able to create dimensions, which is a pretty big feat on its own. Eventually, after I was able to master them, after spending 100 years inside a domain, which is equivalent to 1 year outside, I was able to fully grasp on the powers and master them all. Able to even release the soldiers that the Darkest Night created for me. They were incredibly loyal to me and they will not disobey me, nor my family. Eventually, I was able to use a similar technique to the Shadow Monarch so I can get into my shadows, since I'm practically the darkest being in the universe, or the multiverse as well. Eventually, I was able to practically fix most of the things that Darkest Knight have done. Eventually, I decided to go into different multiverses, as I want to explore them. Eventually, I was able to find what if Deku was Batman in these superhero girls. It was a pretty interesting story that I watched on YouTube, so I decided why not visit this dimension. Eventually, when I visited, my presence alone shook the entire universe. I decided to lower my presence as soon as I can, as I just decided to stay in my Darkest Night present. But I did close my mouth so I don't look that menacing. Eventually, I decided to have myself in the shower as I watched everything happen. I was pretty impressed by this Deku having the power and mentality of Batman. I was pretty impressed. Eventually, I would have confronted him. He would ask me who I am, with me then revealing myself. Of course, I would not smile, but I would just chuckle, saying that I'm an alternative version of Batman, and so he is. Of course, Deku is confused with what I mean, but I'll tell you he'll find out soon. For now, he should warn the girls. It'll be the best for now, as I'll disappear in the full mist, as they could be confused with what just happened. Eventually, after he gets my message on going to the rooftop in 10 p.m., he then goes there alongside these superior girls. Seeming as the girls are ready to fight me, well, me not even bothering with them, since I can easily take them out if I can. The girls were trying to attack me, but I would just summon my darkest Batmans with Red Death, Batman the Ruthless, Dexter Batman, and female Batman that you a female variation that became the Queen of Atlantis. Was able to easily knock them out because of the power difference between them was gigantic. It was like comparing you could say a dwarf star level character to a sea level character. Is that big of a difference between them? So yeah. Then when Diana uses her power, she's no match to either one of my Batmans. She is actually able to realize that Batman the Ruthless kind of looks like Ares, and Batman the Ruthless does decide to explain to her that he's from alternate version of Batman who practically killed her in a different timeline and became the new Ares, or the God of War. But he calls himself Batman the Ruthless. Of course, of course, this Diana will be incredibly strong just by thinking about it. She then looks at Deku, but I explain to her this is an alternative variation of Batman. And so is Deku. He's an alternative variation of Batman, who is not Bruce Wayne, but Izuku Midoriya. Of course, Deku may confused with what I mean. Eventually, I will explain to him the original story of the first ever Batman of Bruce Wayne. The first ever Batman to appear, and eventually I will explain to him the origins of Darkest Knight. Not me, but a previous Dark Knight. I'm practically the second one. With Deku actually being shocked that this type of evil variation of Batman actually exists, even an alternative version of him that is evil. I tell him that I was able to get rid of that Darkest Knight by killing him and absorbing all his energy. I just wanted to make sure that the multiverse was safe from other dark beings. The only dark being can only be me, and I will protect the multiverse and not even the entire timelines from any threat that comes to me. Of course, they're gonna be pretty happy that I'm on the good side, but I tell them that I have my ways on dealing with evil. Either it's torture, killing, or just trapping them inside a domain of torture, which Dale doesn't understand. I'm much more ruthless than him, but I do have my own type of justice. Eventually, I would have met with Barry Allen. Of course, Barry would have been confused on who that guy in the red suit is, but eventually, Red Death will explain to Barry about him being alternate version of Batman that practically stole his Barry's powers and trap him inside of his body. Which is why this kind of Barry kind of freaks him out, but he decides to just get along with it. Eventually, other Batmans were able to explain the alternative variations of the universe, and even most of the girls were actually surprised that there was actually a female Batman. They will most likely be shocked about her, with her being kind of nervous. If we're the personalities, I most likely would have decided to let the Darkest Knights have their own personality. If we're the female Batman is kind of a shy girl, but not too much. When it comes to battle, she's incredibly strong and confident. But when it comes to normal talking and something normal, she's kind of shy about it. While the others are just calmer. Batman the others are kind of almost emotionless. He does not react to almost anything because he's incredibly calm. Red Death is kind of an energetic guy, but he knows when to keep his cool down, almost like focusing on other things. While Devastator Batman is kind of the muscle. He's not that smart, but he's pretty smart on his own right. He just deals with things with brute strength because he knows that his intelligence might not bring in that much of a big difference, but his strength will do improve. Of course, they also ask her many questions, with me just telling them that they are practically make her uncomfortable. But of course, her blushing and thanking me, with me just saying that's no problem. Eventually, they were able to hear about their stories, and they're sad because they have to go through these dark times. Of course, I'll tell them that I was able to raise all dark multiverses and eventually replace them with much more better variations of them, which practically the outcome did not happen. It was actually changed by me as I want to have them all good outcomes. In Devastator Batman Dark Universe, Batman was actually able to use the kryptonite to kill Superman before he was able to go on a rampage, before even that happened. Even though it kind of sounded that Batman, he knew that Clark was able to go out of control sooner or later. And so did for the Red Death's timeline. Instead of Bruce practically sacrificing Barry, he asked Barry if he can give him the power of the Speed Force, which Barry briefly gave Bruce the power so he can practically change the death of his loved ones, even though he knew they will lead to consequences. So he did take them. The Batmans that I have with me were pretty happy that I was able to change their own multiverses, even though I could not bring them the original back. Of course, the female Batman, or I call her Batwoman, I will just tell her that she can stay with me if she wants, while the others will get research to try and find other martyrs like me, so he can recruit them. Well, of course, I'll tell him to don't be too cold to them, or else I will have threatened them because I am smart. I practically possess incredible cosmic knowledge, which means that I almost know everything. I know the locations of some of the martyrs, but not all of them. Some of them don't have powers, while others do have powers. Most of them are around 75% of my variations, or I would say that around 55% of my variations were without powers, while the 45% are with powers, which is incredibly slight big difference, which I'll be pretty surprised. So it's practically a lucky one, huh? But yeah, I guess I have to deal with that. Eventually, that will lead me to practically generating a new team with the alternative variation of me who receive the power of Gogio, as I'll just call him AF Martin. Of course, I'll just call him Gogio sometimes, but we will practically be the two leaders of the multiversal guardians, which will consist of the 10 strongest Martins in the entire timelines. Me being the second strongest, and AF Gogio being the first strongest. If you're wondering why AF Gogio is stronger than me, is because the cosmology between DC timelines and practically the Dragon Ball timelines, or is actually incredibly big, huge. Yes, the universe is not that big because this universe is practically bigger than the Dragon Ball universe, but when it comes to cosmology, they were kind of actually similar. But I'm gonna say that he's stronger because he was able to practically overpower me. Remember, he has the potential of growing and increasing his power as long as he fights. While I have the battle knowledge and the power and durability of handling his battle, I'll most likely not be able to adapt it fast enough for him, which will most likely lead to my defeat if I am to fight him. Which I'm gonna say that we're pretty close in power, but I will just like to take second place because I don't mind it. Of course, if Gojo wanted me to take first place, but I'll tell him that he's much more powerful and much more responsible than me. He has many years of experience, while I only have 100. He has more than millions of years of experience, not even thousands. So I'll just give him that. Now, of course, if Gojo decides to listen to me, and eventually we're able to get multiple variations of us. But it seems that we're not able to get all of them. Similarly, as we're only able to practically connect or even see one variation of us who's about to die, but he received the soul leveling system, which will be quite surprising for both of us. Maybe he'll be the next member of our team, but we just have to see. Eventually, most of my life will most likely go the same. Since I have the power to do anything, I will most likely have a peaceful life. Since I don't have any threats nor enemies, I'll most likely live a peaceful life. Of course, my parents will be kind of freaked out by my powers, and eventually I'll be able to explain to my entire family about it, with of course them being mostly freaked out or just being disturbed by it, but eventually they were able to get along with it. I'm also able to practically use the Dr. Manhattan and Bruce Wayne form, which I think is much more suitable for me when I'm around or just have my original form. I just don't like the Darkest Night form. I know it's kind of creepy and cool at the same time, but I think that if I am to be around my family, I shouldn't smile that creepily, because I'll most likely disturb them. Of course, I do open my mouth while using my darkest form, and it's kind of incredibly white. I can wind it at least 120 degree, which is pretty impressive. If we're in battle, I will most likely would stay with me while the Darkest Knights will have their own places in my domain. Eventually, we most likely would have lived together, eventually would have married one another. Of course, I know she has a little bit of mental issues, but I was able to give her a therapist, which would be a therapist Batman, which I think is kind of cool to know that this type of variation of Batman became a therapist. So eventually, after the therapy, she's able to actually get pretty good in pretty good health. Eventually, I was able to practically remove the enchantments of her able to breathe underwater and instead give her the abilities like the Atlantic people. So she was able to breathe underwater and use any type of water manipulation ability, which she will be most pretty satisfied with it. I was able to practically give her skin back the regular color, and eventually we married both one another. Eventually, multiple years would have passed, with me and her eventually having two children. Eventually, I decided to call one of them Bruce, since I want to have respect for the original Batman. Well, the other one I decided to call him Dick, like Dick Grayson and the student of Batman and his son. So I said that both of them were brothers. Eventually, afterwards, I was able to train both of them. They don't have the omnipotent power from me at birth because my power was given to me. from birth, but they do not possess the same ability as mine. Yes, they do have much more unnatural strength like Superman, but they do not possess any of the abilities of Superman or mine. I was able to give them the ability to adapt in battle, and they cannot die that easily. They can live longer than any human life. I must say that they can live at least 300 years. 100 years at their prime, in 200 years when they start to get older and older. But yeah, eventually there'll be multiple peaceful times. Eventually I'll decide. Eventually Batman became immortal with me. Eventually as we watch our children's grow, I'll of course watch over the multiverse and timelines to make sure that everything is alright. My job was to be a protector and a guardian. And I would take this job seriously. I was not to be joke around. I was a serious person and I will always be one. Of course I can kinda get in the mood with pulling out jokes or just laughing creepily, but I'm just like that. Eventually I was able to practically Eventually, me and Evgujo were able to practically assist a team after a couple of years would have passed. But of course, our team able to grow as one of the most powerful monsters will appear. But of course, we're still 10 in numbers. We only have 10. Even though we are the 10 strongest out of all Martines, we're still lacking much more arm power. Even though we are currently powerful and have any other Mars have their own abilities, we need much more so we can create our own society, the Martine Society, or the Martine Verse, which I'll call it like that. Eventually, me and Evgujo were able to visit multiple other variations of us. Even some who don't have powers but they were incredibly intelligent were able to join us. Even some variations of Alfred that were able to get from the Dark Multiverse. Eventually, to creating the Martine Society so we can protect the multiverse. Of course, I was also able to prevent the Spider-Verse event of the second movie. And eventually, I will most likely would be able to deal with Miguel and eventually fix most of the broken things that happen in that variation of multiverse. But I'm also able to actually see another variation of us, who was actually from the Marvel universe and had the most powerful being out of all of them, which I'll be surprised to actually see. This variation of me who's the Marvel universe is practically like a kind of a mirrored version of me. While I possess the power of the darkness, he possesses the power of the light. He was known as the god and the one above all. While I am the darkest knight, he's the one above all. Which would be pretty surprising. I'll actually invite him to join our team, and eventually he would have agreed. Because he doesn't actually see the problem with it. He has his own mentality as Martin, but he also possesses the power and knowledge of one above all, which is pretty impressive for me. I know that one above all is actually stronger than the darkest knight. But this Marty explains that my power is actually incredibly close to his because of my training. I have mastered all my power, but yet it seems that my power is actually rivaling his, which practically makes one above all Martin to actually be the same level as me, but a little bit lower because he does not possess the same manipulation abilities that I do possess. So he must could have ranked third strongest out of all the Martins. Also, if you guys are wondering, yes, I'm gonna make up for it if I was one above all, just so you guys know. But this video has to get to at least 3 likes so I can make this what if happen. So I hope we able to reach this like goal in the end of the week. Yes, I'm giving you guys a time limit, so you better be fast, or else, no, we're not gonna hear the story. But guys, it's the end of the story. See you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.